Hi everybody! So, graphene. Who doesn't know what graphene is? Graphene is the strongest material known to man, and when you get down to the level of the atom, it looks like chicken wire laid out. It's so strong that a tiny amount can significantly improve the properties of plastics, paints, composites, asphalt, wood composites, concrete, metals, and all kinds of things. It only has one slight problem, and that is it's crazy expensive. It's about $200,000 a ton or something like that, and the reason is it's difficult and dangerous to make. It uses hideous chemicals, things like 98% sulfuric acid, not stuff you're going to want to be handling, and the product is disappointing. It's not really graphene. It's often referred to as graphene, but it's fewer layer graphene, or it's pretty damaged, or it's pretty small. So it's been disappointing until about 2013 when Rice came out with something called flash graphene, and flash graphene was a method of making graphene supposedly easily. The setup is surprisingly simple. It's a couple of brass rods stuck in a glass tube with the sample in between them, and as you can see from the circuit diagram, we have a power supply that charges up a capacitor bank, and then we get a switch that allows that power to go through the tube, and what you see is a very bright light. In that bright flash is the release of the energy, and what happens is the temperature is raised to about 3000 degrees Kelvin in about 10 milliseconds. That kind of time means that the heat transfer can't go out of the sample. It all stays in that sample because it's just too quick. The first thing that happens is it carbonizes. The next thing that happens is it reforms into graphene, and true enough, it's a marvelous operation. But it does have some hidden things in there that make it very difficult to do at home, and one of them is that little thing capacitor bank on the circuit diagram we looked at. That capacitor bank actually consists of about 20 capacitors. It's 0.22 farads capacitance at 400 volts. So it's also lethal. You might have noticed the danger sign. It's also expensive. Those individual capacitors themselves are quite expensive, and to build a capacitor bank probably costs somewhere around about £3,000 to £4,000. So I think it's a little outside of what we could do easily at home, although in industry, of course, it could be done easily, especially if you have the money to spend on capacitors. But flashing graphene with electrical energy for capacitors isn't the only way to flash graphene. You can also flash it with light, and this is a 20-watt diode laser. Now you only need about 3.6 watts, and the original work was done with the CO2 laser, although it's since been discovered that diode lasers work just fine. Now it came about when Dr. Kerner was looking at flash scribing graphene oxide, and he was making capacitors out of that. Tour tried to replicate that and made a mistake, and what he did was flash this stuff capped on tape, and he found that if you flash capped on tape, then you've got two kinds of graphene on there. One was a spongy kind of graphene, and if you changed this, you got a rod kind of graphene, because what you do is you do multiple passes. It takes about 3 passes. The first carbonizes the kapton, the second reforms it, and the third helps the graphene grow. So passing this a number of times will make the graphene grow in a spongy form. That's if the light is focused. If you defocus the light, then every time you move a spot, you're effectively multi-lasing an area, and you get a needle-like growth by defocusing the light. Now when they discovered that kapton worked quite well, of course, they went on to other things, and now they've discovered that you can actually scribe graphene onto a whole host of things, including paper, wood, a range of plastics, and even materials like potatoes and coconut they've been doing. Now if you look back on the channel, you'll find that we've done an awful lot on graphene. Mechanical methods, chemical methods, electrical methods. We've also done videos on using lasers to create graphene. In fact, how the channel started, we started by making supercapacitors and supercapacitors out of graphene. If you fancy giving a graphene a go and you don't really want to take your life into your own hands or spend thousands of pounds doing it, then you could do worse than approaching flash graphene from light flashing graphene using a laser, because remember, It's only 3.6 watts of optical output, so we're not talking about a super powerful laser. We're talking about a desktop thing that just about anybody can get their sticky little fingers on. Now, the supercapacitors you make from doing this kind of method where you're lasering something like Kapton are 10 times better than the supercapacitors that you can currently buy on the market, and that brings them into the region of lithium-ion batteries. So if you fancy giving that a go, then to my mind, light flashing, laser scribing is the way to go for home experimentation, home use, and home creation of graphene and its uses. You don't need just to do supercapacitors and energy storage. That's my particular interest. If you were to laser scribe a whole surface and turn it into a sheet of graphene, well, you could make it into a speaker. You can make it into a heating pad. You could scrape the top off and use it as an addition in concrete, because 0.02% addition of graphene into concrete makes it 35% stronger. So there's a whole range of things you could do that have been unapproachable because the methodology of doing it has been downright dangerous, where something like this brings it into the hands of everybody. So I thought I would share those ideas with you. If you want to review the stuff we've been doing on graphene, the channel is full of it. Please feel free. If you fancy giving it a go yourself, grab yourself a laser, have a bit of a read, and just get going and give it a go. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and please do remember to like and subscribe.